So, welcome everyone to the bi-weekly I Help Pastors Get Jobs meetup. We believe that pastors want to work hard, provide for their families, and build ministries of sustainability. So I was telling Daniel before the call started, I'm like very overwhelmed because this is my first day back from my vacation slash sabbatical slash parental leave. Like I was literally in the mountains of upstate New York yesterday, and today I haven't really stopped since, the kids woke up at 7 a.m. So, but I'm excited to be with you all. And Daniel, thanks so much for making the time today, brother.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So here's kind of my opening question for you. Keep it simple, keep it light. Tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I grew up in the South, actually, from Tennessee, near Nashville. My parents are still there. Spent time there, and was my oldest brother actually preceded me into full-time ministry, and he's currently actually still a missionary in Uruguay. And so I was really highly affected by him and my other family, a strong Christian family. And I decided I was called into full-time ministry. I really genuinely believe that, still believe that. And or to an extent, maybe not vocational ministry at the moment, but I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, spent some time there. I graduated, and I met my wife there, ended up living in Oregon for a bit, where she's from. And then I got the position here in Delaware, which was at a church nearby, and I spent 7 years there, which was a journey. A lot of ups and downs, but grew a lot there, and then that led me to where I'm at right now.
Awesome. And just for full transparency, Daniel joined me at my company, Europe. So we have an office in Wilmington, Delaware, and you've been with Europe now for a month. You started after July 4th, is that right?
Correct. Just about a month, yeah.
All right, so let's go backwards a little bit. 7 years at the church. As much as you're kind of comfortable with sharing, what were some of the cues or promptings? You went from saying your brother was in ministry, you felt called to full-time ministry, to now you're not in full-time ministry. What are some of the moments where you're like, maybe this is a time for a change? What can you share there?
Yeah, so I'm happy to share on that. Basically, I mentioned a little bit, but the church I was a part of, so it was very unique congregation. It was a Chinese American church, and I'd always wanted to do multicultural ministry, and I loved multicultural ministry, still do. But it was a Chinese American congregation and had some unique challenges. And the people were great, young people especially, I was the youth pastor, so I love that. But there were a lot of toxic aspects of the church, and toxic leadership culture, a lot of things that just are not addressed and continue to go unaddressed in how things are done there. And so those started to build up over 7 years. Took its toll on me personally. It took a toll on my wife. I think I understand more fully now that being a pastor is much harder on the spouse than it is on the actual pastor. It's just unfortunate, but part of the deal, especially in that traditional culture. So it's very toxic. So I felt for a long time, I thought about leaving. I wanted to stay for a while, but I've talked about leaving. But there was this part of me that wanted to stay. I was like, these kids deserve better. These young people deserve better. I really felt, I was called to this mission, these people. I genuinely still do love these people. But I started to ignore some of the toxic aspects for my own sake of wanting to be there, wanting to continue there. And my wife really didn't. She did not want to continue. And she wanted to continue for me, but she didn't really want to be there. She didn't want to be in that church context. So I didn't really listen to the warning signs that kind of she was giving me. And a few months ago, she actually told me she's not really sure if she wants to be a pastor's wife anymore. And I was alarmed by that. but I still did not take it seriously enough. So I was thinking at that point, okay, I definitely, should really think about leaving, but I wasn't actively like searching. I was looking a little bit. I was like, my dream would be like plant a church. So I was like looking at opportunities for that, but I was taking my time. And so it dragged on further. And then a couple months ago, my wife stopped coming to the church and she told me she's actually thinking about leaving me. Um, so at that point, it was, beyond just warnings, it was alarm bells, right? Everything was coming to a head. And I realized at that moment, in a large extent, I was putting my my desires for my career, for ministry, before my marriage, even. And so I decided in that moment, over the course of a few days, I decided, after intense prayer, after talking with friends, close friends that I trusted, mentors, that I needed to leave like immediately. I needed to get out, and I need to step away from ministry for at least a season. Full time ministry, pastoring. I needed to not be in that context. So it's very apparent to me, and so that was the decision I made. And then that led me to getting a hold of Eric, which was definitely a God thing, and Eric helped a lot in getting the position that I have now.
Awesome, Daniel, and thank you so much for just your transparency and just telling it as it is. I think we all can relate the strain that ministry not only puts on us, but on our families and our friends and those that we love. Whether it's missing birthday parties or weddings or graduations or evenings not being home, and fill in the blank, expectations said and unsaid, all of the above. So tell us a little about the past month. I know the job is still kind of new, but for a lot of us, we can't even conceive of what's life like, quote unquote, on the outside. And here you were, a youth pastor for 7 years. I mean, that's a pretty good run, right? So
Yeah,
how has it been for you the last month or so?
yeah. The last month has been great. For the most part. For the most part, it's been like the organization I'm with. Year Up is a wonderful organization. It's a secular nonprofit, but it's very mission driven, and I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed the job. I've enjoyed having weekends. That's nice. Um, and so overall, I'd say I'm much healthier. I'm in a better place. There have been part of me that's certainly been mourning the um, the the difference in not being in that position of full-time pastor. And I loved it in many ways, still do. So I'm mourning that. I have been mourning that. But I know beyond doubt that this is where God wants me. So I'm still following his call, just followed it to a new um, experience, a new phase in life. And I'm learning that's okay. So overall, it's been great.
Awesome, awesome. So glad to hear that. Looking back now with a little bit of hindsight, I know you're still very close to the situation, but when you think about your transition and those kind of tough conversations you had to have with the leadership and with the young adults who served, with the families, do you have any part of you that thinks, oh gosh, if I could go back and do it differently, I might do this differently? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah. So one thing I would do differently for the transition is when I transitioned, and I really wanted to leave well. So that was really one of my priorities. And so that once I got the position at Europe, once I was hired officially, I asked for a month, and they were very generous. They gave me 6 weeks of transition time. So I was happy about that, but I was not thinking clearly when I told my when I resigned. I basically said to them, "Yeah, I'll stay for the full 6 weeks." And my last Sunday was July 3rd, and then I started Europe July 5th. I had one day off, So looking back, I should have thought through it, and I would have given myself a week in between jobs. So that would be my one thing I would do differently, is definitely need time off in between jobs. I think I needed that time to incorporate. It ended up okay, but it would have been better, I think, if I had taken that
Yeah,
week between.
must have been a very strange July 4th for you. somewhere in between
Yes.
the hot dogs and the fireworks. And wait a second. I wish
Yeah.
no, I totally get it though. That we're used to just go all the time, and if I'm taking a week or two off, I really recommend that for folks making a transition. Take some time, heal, travel if you can. Spend time doing things you enjoy, because it's a big shift going from. I was just at church on Sunday to now I'm in a staff meeting with all these new people and I have no idea what's happening. So yeah, really helpful advice. Do you have anything that you look back in a transition and say, I did this aspect really well?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm thankful for this, and I had a lot of wise counsel. I had a lot of people helping me think through this. Um, but I don't think it's ever good to leave somewhere and just be blasting the people that um, hurt you, or or people that you don't really have good feelings with. Um, and I think I had these like fantasies before I left my church of like when I would leave my church, I'd call out all these people. And yeah, I realized that was not, it's just not good. It's not worth it for me, for anyone. So what I am proud of that is that I did leave well, and that people actually took it really well. We're actually very understanding. So I focused on the positives in my transition. I was honest with people. I wasn't dishonest, but at the same time, there were some things that people didn't need to know. So I was focused on the positives. I was honest with people, especially when they asked questions. But I transitioned out well, and I really was trying to be positive, and I wasn't putting anyone down on my way out. I was trying to be as positive as possible and leave the best way I could.
Awesome, man. I'm so glad to know that I'm not the only pastor that has revenge fantasies when leaving a church.
Yes, yeah.
If I ever see this guy in public, I'm gonna,
Call
Yes,
all these people out, right?
exactly, exactly. My Facebook wall is gonna blow up with all these people. Awesome. So cool. I'm glad to hear that. That's how it went well. Maybe an area you would change. And tell us a bit about what your role is now. Like, what's your day to day look like? Two-part question. What's your day to day look like? And what have you learned in ministry that has prepared you for what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I am the operations manager at the Wilmington branch of Europe, also helping with the Philadelphia branch. Um, and my day to day has been a lot of training, and a lot of just getting familiar with my job. Um, so Europe is as I said earlier, like a very mission focused organization. Even though it's a secular organization, their mission is to close the opportunity divide by providing job training, skills training for young adults. They want to see every young adult, even if they don't have the resources available to them to have those resources provided to reach their full potential. So I was all about the mission, and it made it really easy for me to be a part of the organization. And certainly being in ministry for so long, being full-time ministry, it was easy to transfer that to being as mission focused as I am. And I think, yeah, a lot of things. I mean, being a pastor, my job now is actually similar in the sense of like operations manager is kind of like a very catch-all position, but being a pastor is a very catch-all position. It's like kitchen sink, a lot of different things you're doing, skills you're learning. So I have found that I there are a lot of things I've been able to apply. One thing I haven't started to apply really, but I think I will. I've applied a little bit in training, but as public speaking, is that I really have 7 years of where I honed my public speaking skills, and I know I'll be able to utilize that. I think I would be a lot more nervous and a lot more unsure of myself in this job if it wasn't for that. But since I have that, I'm pretty confident in when I start facilitating more and working with young adults, speaking more, that I'll be able to transition well into that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. I have two more questions, and I want to, of course, open the floor for others to ask. It's been super helpful. You mentioned it earlier. I want to kind of drill down a little bit because I think it's worth exploring is what are the challenges that you're experiencing, working a non-ministry job? 7 years, you were full-time in the church. Now you're not for the first time in a good while. What are some of the things that you're kind of feeling or facing or experiencing with this change?
Yeah, so um, I think I kind of mentioned this earlier, but being in ministry so long, and I do generally still feel called to pastoral ministry and was called to pastoral ministry and love pastoral ministry in many ways. So I think there's certainly these self-doubts of, is this really what God wants? Is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Kind of the guilt of like, I was supposed to be doing this and I should be doing this. Um, but I think it's helped me just to understand that, for one, I don't know the future. So I've told people this is a season. It could be something where it lasts a long time, could be a long-term career, or it could empower me to be bivocational, which I'm seriously considering, and or it could empower me to church plant. So I don't know what the future looks like. For now, I'm focused on just learning the job and focusing on my marriage, which is going a lot better. But certainly there have been those self doubts and those things that have come up in uh, feeling self pity for myself, which I know is not helpful, but does happen.
Yeah, of course it does. When we have this script in our mind that says I'm going to be in full-time ministry because that's the elite Christians, and then we're not anymore. Certainly, self-doubt is so real, and I feel it often in my life. And I've been a bivocational pastor since 2017, and there's many times where I still feel like, my gosh, am I in the junior leagues because I'm not full-time? Then I have to remind myself the most I ever got paid being a pastor, even in New York City, was 40K a year.
Mm.
So my rent is $3,000 a month. So
Mm.
just do some quick napkin math, and you realize, wait a second, that doesn't leave you much wiggle room, does it? So I generally don't know. I mean, how folks survive. I mean, they have ways they do it. They fundraise. They're good at that. But in inner city communities like mine, and also rural communities as well. That's where I first learned about bivocational ministry. Was a pastor in Wyoming. He's like, listen, man, I can have a church of 100 people. I still can afford, to live, because of the cost of living, in addition to what people are able to give financially. So, yeah, I think those feelings are real. They're valid. And I wish I could tell you they go away, but they don't. But as you continue to grow and expand in your ministry, they become a little bit less.
Right.
Awesome, Daniel. This was really, really fun. Stephen or Tracy, do either of you folks have questions for Daniel about his story, his transition from full-time minister to marketplace leader?
I just want to say thanks for sharing so honestly, and it's all stuff that's inside our heads, and we can't get it out there. It's like a healing process. So thanks for sharing. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing has been in that transition, because I'm still looking to keep being a pastor in that, but just kind of the day to day with your new schedule and thinking about one day maybe doing ministry again. When you think about that, how do you think about having those healthy rhythms of life? Like if you're thinking a year or two from now, you plan a church, what's it going to look like having a full-time type of deal, a career kind of deal, which I've done before. So I just wonder if that's something that the balance of that seems difficult in your mind in the future, or seems easy, or just love to hear kind of how you process that.
Yeah. Well, certainly it's something I'm still figuring it out, very early in that. As I said, right now I'm focused on getting familiar with this job, focusing on my marriage, kind of building healthy rhythms, so that if and when I do go back to some type of ministry, whether it be church planning or bivocational ministry, that I have those healthy rhythms in place, so that I can better transition to that. I think that was one of the problems, when I was in full-time vocational ministry, is I didn't have the best healthy rhythms. I didn't have balance. And it's kind of interesting because I'm in this new job, and I think it's going to change a little bit as this new cohort of students comes in, and it'll get busier. But um, the organization I'm with is much, much better at maintaining and enforcing boundaries than my church was. Um, and so I'm finding that I'm going to have a lot more freedom to maintain boundaries and enforce boundaries, and a person in a job that I work for that's going to be fully okay with that. As opposed to when I was in full-time ministry, which there was never a season where I was not maxed out. There's never a slow season. Like literally I was for 7 years straight. I did have vacation, and I slower somewhat, but there's never a slow season. I was always busy. And that's one of the reasons why it hurt my marriage, is because I wasn't there was no time. I was spending concentrated time with my wife. So I think this is going to allow me to build those healthy rhythms, which I'm still in the works of doing. I'm learning my new schedule. I'm going to build those healthy rhythms so that when I do something, which I would love to plant a church, and so if that happens, then I can start to build that and ease into that. So I think that, if that kind of answers your question. Certainly I have a lot to learn. I actually wanted to ask Eric a little bit more about how he does it, because he's in that. And so I have a lot to learn, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Great question, Stephen. Great answer, Daniel.
Daniel, when did you know, not because it's only just 6 weeks or whatever, 6 weeks before you left, and is when you resigned or said you were leaving. But when did you start, you knew God was calling you away from that church? When did that start for you?
When did it become clear that?
Yeah,
God was
when did you reach out to Eric? Maybe that was that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it was once I basically, when my wife just started being very honest with me, and then I did a few days of praying and talking to different friends, and I basically just came to the decision that I felt very clear God was leading me to, that I needed to leave church, leave my church, and leave full-time ministry. Okay. That I needed to get out immediately. So I felt very clear then. And that certainly wasn't easy. I honestly thought I would have to get a factory job and be making take a massive pay cut, and I wasn't qualified to do anything. So I think it was very much a God thing, because I made that decision fully, but I wasn't expecting much. And I reached out to a friend who was a friend of Eric. And so it just happened he was like, I know of someone. And then he connected me with Eric. And then I talked with Eric. And that was all in the course. From the point I made that decision, that was maybe 1 or 2 weeks. And then I got in touch with Eric. And then Eric actually, with only a few days of being in contact with him, I heard about and applied to the job a year up.
Wow.
And I got that position, I think, 3 weeks after that.
Wow, quick.
Yeah, it all lined up. Which, I know that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that to happen. Thought it would take much longer.
Yeah. And so what things do you have in place now, knowing that you jumped in to a position right away? Like you said, you're working on your marriage, but do you have some other resources you're connecting with to put in the better rhythms, to establish those better rhythms, a community around you? Because that's the interesting thing, right? When we leave a church, we leave that community, right? And so
yeah.
It's work.
Yeah.
Everything's work. Got to find a new church. You got to find community. Because I so just quit I left. I resigned from my position from church. And I've been in ministry 20 years. So I have a little more, I think, healing. So I haven't been working since I left end of June. I needed the month of July just to heal, because it was a tumultuous 2.5 years, and don't start a job right before pandemic. And so a church that adopted another church, don't do that right before a pandemic. It's it was a perfect storm for everything. And so it's just been important to have a community around, because I can't go back to those people. Because what I started noticing, because there were people that still wanted to walk with me through this, because I resigned without another job, and I didn't know what was next. And God made very clear my time is done serving in the church. And so they just see an act of obedience, that they're just like, we want to walk with you through this. but I also have to put boundaries because now they know I'm a safe place that they can come and complain about church. I'm like, that's not healthy. That's not. And so I've told them saying, we're gonna, if you have something you want to complain about, we're turning it to prayer, because that's the posture I need to take. Otherwise I'm going to jump in that pity, that boat with you. So I get long question, but yeah, just, how you're getting other support.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm still working that out for sure. I am thankful that while I am trying to I'm maintaining boundaries in the sense of how I'm connected and not connected with my previous church community. I am thankful that I'm still in the vicinity, still in the area, so I'm able to continue the relationships that I want to continue, which like I'm happy to do and want to do because I built those relationships for 7 years, and so I'm maintaining some of those friendships, relationships, still in some discipleship relationships with different people, but then I'm seeking to build a community elsewhere. So that I'm still working on because it's been very, very soon since we left, and we were also moving apartments at the same time, so we've been busy with that. So, but what I do want to do is find a church that my wife and I both can feel at home at, and yeah, it's just going to care for us for a bit. So I'm certainly not in a hurry to get back into a situation where I'm in a leadership in a church, because I just need to be cared for, and pastored myself for a while, and my wife as well. What I am also thankful for is that I've been able to, because I left well, my church I still have like good relationship, good boundaries set there, but a good relationship. So I'm actually going to be guest speaking like every couple of months. And for me, that's good because I love doing that. I love pastoring, and I want to remain connected. And I know if I don't guest speak, I'm going to lose those abilities. It's going to be dampening. So I keep those skills. I keep guest speaking. I keep things like that, keep relationships. But I also am very much in the process of starting to build a new community and new connections. If that answers your question.
That's huge. Yeah.
So I kind of a follow-up to Tracy's question, because now I'm just curious for my own interest. How have you and your wife kind of discerned and figured out, like, this is the kind of church we want to go to and be members of and serve in whatever capacity? Like, what have been those conversations? What's that look like? Because I mean, 7 years, I mean, as we all can tell, Daniel's a young guy. So that's a big chunk of his career he was the pastor, and they went to church where he worked. So this is a big change for you. So what have those conversations look like?
Yeah. And we're still early in that, but we've definitely, I think where we're at spiritually, where my wife's at spiritually, we definitely want a church that it's not going to be a super traditional church. We've kind of been burned out on traditionalism. And so I think we're yearning for something where it's certainly, I think my wife and I are somewhat different in that I have my, things, I have my checklist of what I consider to be, biblically accurate or in line with Christ-likeness. And then my wife has her needs and what she's looking for. So I think, but we're both on the same page in that we do want somewhere where it's not super traditional. We have a couple of ideas of churches we want to check out. And we have some churches that we also like, because I was a pastor for 7 years and she was a pastor's wife for 7 years. We didn't have the opportunity very often to like check out churches just for fun. So we are looking forward to doing that to an extent. So there's some friends of mine that have churches, and then we're like huge Tim Keller fans. We like want to go to New York and visit Redeemer Presbyterian. So things like that. So we're not, we're going to do things like that, but certainly our hope is to find a community here that will fit both of our our spiritual needs right now and ways that we need to be cared for and pastored ourselves.
I love that. I love that. And there's nothing wrong either with taking, a few Sundays and sleeping in and making pancakes and chilling
Right.
out. We've done plenty of that this summer. We had a whole list of all the churches we were going to visit while we were on sabbatical, and we visited 0 of them because every Sunday we just hung out at home and just did nothing. And it was really
Good
good
for you.
for our souls. So
Hmm.
I'd encourage you, don't feel any pressure like I have to find a new place tomorrow. Right.
Right.
Yeah, and see, I've loved, what does my neighborhood look like on a Sunday morning? Because I was in the church building at 7 a.m. and I didn't get home till 1:30 p.m. So I have no what happened.
Hmm.
So it's been beautiful just to, and I wake up every Sunday. Okay, God, where do you want me today? Is it here? Is it, or to go? And so it's been beautiful. Just and so just, you're the church. You are the church. You can't go to something that you are, is what I keep. So
Yeah.
keep that in your mind in there too. So, and I say that out loud, so I say it back to myself too. Remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
No, I love that. And that's something I think we lost track of. And one of the reasons why I saw it as where God was leading me is that being in the church for 7 years, I was very, very isolated. Like, I had no non-Christian friends, really. I was completely in the church building, like institutional church, for all the time. And it wasn't all bad for certain, but I was so isolated, and I fully agree with you on that statement that we are the church and the church is where we are at, rather than, just all going to this holy huddle building somewhere away from our communities that we live in. And so that's I do want to embody that. And I also, like, if I ever plan a church, like or be a part of a ministry again, that I would want to be where the people are, in a church that is a church for that community it's in.
Awesome. Any other questions for Daniel? Any other closing comments before we wrap up? I have one more question for you, but I'll save it towards the end. Anything else you want to ask, Daniel? All right. So here's my question for you, and then we'll let you go. Thanks again for your time today. We really appreciate it. We learned a lot. This was awesome. I know it's only been a month or 5 weeks, but like, what do you think and pray and wonder about, like, down the road for you? Have you given thought to, like, a year from now, 2 years from now, like, return to vocational ministry? Is that kind of your heartbeat? Is it, like, you mentioned kind of church planting? Is that like in Wilmington, Delaware? Are you kind of open to wherever? Like, what have you kind of been thinking or exploring about, what God wants to do next for you? Because I asked this question so that I want you not to believe something you kind of said earlier, which is, well, I'm now, not in full-time ministry, so that's it, right? I think God still has you in ministry, as you ministry at your job, as you ministry in your marriage, as you ministry in your community. So what are you kind of dreaming and praying for right now, Daniel?
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Like, I see myself, and that's what I told people in my church, is that I'm not leaving ministry. I still am called to ministry. It's simply looking like I'm a pastor in the marketplace now, rather than being the pastor in the church that I was for that period of time. So I'm definitely praying a lot, certainly, about my future. I've said I'm not sure what the future holds. I'm still figuring that out. I'm certainly focused a lot on the present in terms of my marriage and learning those healthy rhythms for the here and now. But I think my dream certainly has been for a long time and continues to be to go into church planning. So I could see myself in the next 2 to 3 years going that route. I think my dream would be in this area, because I've gotten to know Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware, the broader area, and the people here very well. And I've gotten to know the community. Like, I'm not, me leaving my church was not I was very genuine in that I loved the ministry I was doing. Like, I was leaving because it was toxic to the point of harming my marriage, but I very much loved the ministry and the people. So I think my dream, if God allows, would be to plant a church that is that's going to be a healthy environment for second, third generation Asian Americans, because that was kind of the people I was reaching and spending the time with. It would probably be a more multicultural environment. I would want it to be that, and they would want it to be that, but that would be my dream, is that it would be a place where second, third generation English speaking Asian Americans are going to be finding a home, because I think they're very much in between a rock and a hard place. They're in between their first generation traditional, very unhealthy environment, and then they're in between very American churches, which honestly are their cohort. They're the people they're really focused on is just white Americans, and so they're not fitting in either location. And so that's a dream of mine. Will God allow it? Is that where He's leading me? I pray it is, but I'm not fully certain. I am fully certain that He's leading me back into ministry, pastoral ministry. I just don't know what exactly that's going to look like. So it's possible that will be it. It's possible that God will give me the pleasure of that, but it could look different. I'm not totally sure.
Hey, and that's okay. I mean, if you were to ask me what's 2 to 3 years from now look like, I'm like, listen, I'm on like the 12-month plan. I know what's happening between now and next summer. That's about it. After that, I don't know. Even my wife and I were talking about that while we were on our trip, like what's God gonna do in and through us for now. Life happens, seasons come and go, things change. The pandemic disrupted everything and then some. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying I don't know what's gonna happen 2, 3 years down the road. I mean, who really does, right? We're sitting here having this meeting. Who would have said in August 2019, a bunch of pastors from around the country are going to be sitting around talking about life post ministry, right? So here we are. So, man, Daniel, thank you again for the time. And Tracy and Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to be here as well. And we'll officially end our time here right now. So let me stop recording.